Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TriStar Gym channel. Today's episode, I'm doing another Ask Me Anything. I'm not doing this one live because I've received so many questions from you guys already. I have ton of questions to answer and follow up on. So this episode is going to be a follow up on my Joe Rogan appearance. I did a podcast there. We talked about a bunch of stuff. I'm going to review the major topics we talked about and clarify and follow up and answer some of your questions. I thank you all for you guys tuning in and liking and sharing. Very appreciated as always. Okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff. I didn't re-listen to the episode, but from your questions, I do remember exactly pretty much what we talked about. I'm gonna try to go as best as possible in order. Okay, so the first questions that I've been receiving is training intensity. How hard should I train? Now, a lot of you were asking, wondering on the show what I meant by only training about 70%. Okay, when I train in the practice room, I'm not only at 70%. Okay, that was a bit of a simplification. Let's say I'm always working between 65 and 90% of my maximum. Okay, so I'll never go really 100%. The only times I'll do that is rarely throughout the my training. Very rarely, once, twice a year will I push it that far. Why? Because you're flirting with injury. Okay, now all my comments that I'm making right now are for somebody who's training for a lifelong type of routine. He's not preparing for a fight. Okay, when you're preparing for a fight or a particular event, you have a date set, you're going to train a little bit differently. I mean, I'll touch on that a little bit later. Okay, but this is for somebody who's training like me, just every day. You want to stay healthy, you want to stay fit, you want to develop skill. Okay, my comments were mostly directed towards developing skill, not necessarily hypertrophy. Okay, if you guys don't know, I'm not a bodybuilder. I don't lift for mass or size. So we're gonna have to talk about that a little bit later, because a lot of you guys were asking me, how am I gonna gain size, coach, if I don't go at higher intensities? That was not really what I was talking about. What I was talking about was developing skill. Okay, so if you're gonna develop skill, my strategy for developing skill is increasing the volume. How much practice time can I get? So if I train at 100% or 95% on a regular basis, if I train too intense, I need to eventually take a break. Why? Because maximum intensity entails you must take a break. You're going to have to slow down, because if you don't, you're going to burn out. You're going to run out of reserves. You physically cannot continue. Okay, you have physical, biological limits. And of course, injury. Injury is huge. Whenever you're grinding your gears in the red, so to speak. Okay, whenever you're in the red, you have a high chance of injury, or a much higher chance of injury. Okay, at least this has been my observation. Guys who go too hard all the time, their hip is bothering, their knee is bothering them, and then the next day they go hard again, and the next day they go hard again, and then eventually that knee and hip problem is now up in their neck. Now their neck is bothering them, and so on, and the chain just keeps getting worse and worse, and then eventually they have to stop, and they have to stop for a long time, and they need a membership at the physio. And this is not the trajectory I want to encourage you to go in. In my opinion, the guys who last the longest, the guys who do the best, the guys who actually in the long run become more skilled are the guys who are more sensible. Okay, they're going to train 65 to 90% of their capability. Keep a nice comfortable reserve, never go to your max. Now I believe this is true for weight training as well. Okay, now some of you were writing me saying, coach, how is this true if certain muscle fibers won't get triggered unless you go to 90% or more intensity? So the way they explain it is certain muscle fibers don't get activated unless you put a certain amount of intensity, unless you require a certain amount of intensity from your muscles. Okay, well, listen, from what I've read, from what I've understood, you can use a sub-maximal weight, so 70% of your max, and move that weight very quickly. Okay, so if you're doing a clean and jerk, you don't need to max out. You don't have to do your one rep max clean and jerk. You don't need to. Use about 70 to 85% and just do it with more speed. The speed will create more tension on your muscles, but you'll have less weight on your musculature and tendons and all that good stuff that you want to protect. Muscles can rejuvenate. Bones, tendons, yes, they can rejuvenate to a certain degree, but we don't want to tax them. We don't want to tax them more than we have to. And with the speed of the bar, we're adding tension onto the bone. So we're gonna increase in bone density. We're gonna increase in power, speed. We're gonna increase all the abilities that we want. However, we because we're working with lighter weights, we need to recover less, and it's less dangerous for our joints. Okay, so for those of you who want to follow up more on the lifting end, because I'm not really going to go in that area because that's not what I do. I'm not really into the lifting scene. Okay, so if you guys look at me, I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not a lifter. Okay, I do some lifts, so we can talk about it. I do some extra work after jiu-jitsu, after boxing. I will do some exercises, extra work for sure. I believe in conditioning after practice. Conditioning, general exercises, in my opinion, keep the body healthy. They allow you to break through different levels of athleticism. They allow you to exploit your potential for athleticism. Lots of good stuff with general exercises, absolutely. However, I really like the material of Louis Simmons. I like his material. And later on, I'm going to talk about CrossFit. I like the CrossFit material. I'm going to clarify some of my CrossFit comments. Okay, I'm going to clarify them in a little bit. I have a list here. A lot of you CrossFitters reached out to me asking me to clarify. I will do that. Okay, so if you're about lifting, you got to follow a really good lifting coach. That's not really what I'm about. I'm talking to you guys about creating skill. If you're going to go in the practice room, in my opinion, the more often you can go to the practice room and work out between 70 to 85 to 90% of your perceived exertion, rate of perceived exertion, you will be able to practice more often. In the long run, if you calculate throughout the year, at the end of the year, the guy who worked out in that range, the guy who rolled in that range, who sparred in that range, the guy who wrestled in that range, in my opinion, in my experience, okay, of being in the gym for close to 20 years on a regular basis, 2 to 3 times a day, those guys eventually, in the long run, reach the farthest and become more skilled. Okay, so this is my observation. This is my training philosophy. If you have your own training philosophy, please feel free to share it in the comments. I like to hear it. I like to read people's different ideas. Okay, I also talked about flow. Now, what's flow? Flow is like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Forgive me if I'm saying that name wrong. It's a very difficult name, but I believe it's pronounced Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He has a great body of literature. I actually bought one of his books. It's one of the most expensive books I've ever bought. If I remember, it cost me I think it was like $200 of all, like it's a compilation of his flow studies. And you know what? At the end of the day, it was a very dense book. I bought it on, I think it was Amazon or something. I've read his books before. I did a class in college on his material. His material is excellent. It's amazing. I've used it for many, many years, over 10 years. Okay, his material is amazing. It's really incredible. I bought his expensive books, the compilation of his studies and all that. It wasn't worth it, to be honest with you. Why wasn't it worth it for me personally? I wasn't able to. I read some of it. It was just too boring. It was just really too academic. Like really, it's put in a language that's very, very academic and not very interesting to read. And at the end of the day, it comes out. It's very simple. At the end of the day, it's quite simple. It's a quite simple philosophy. You have to find that Goldilocks range. Okay, it's not too hard. It's not too easy. And you're in this state of flow. You're in the flow channel, as they call it. Okay, so practice. You could always scale it up or down. You could always make if you're a creative trainer or creative athlete, you can find a way to scale your workout up or down, and find the right level of resistance. Now, when you find the right level of resistance, you'll know it because time seems to pass. That's the number one. That is the number one indicator you're in a state of flow. Time just flies by. Now, we've all been in a state of flow, no doubt about it. Everybody's driven their car and they went from A to B and they forgot how they got there because maybe they were listening to music, maybe they were in a discussion with someone, maybe they were, I don't know, they were entertained in some way. Okay, there was something going on and you enjoyed your ride and that ride just seemed to fly by. That's flow. You were in a state of flow. Okay, now there's a lot of explanations on why. I'm not getting into that. That's not my domain. But if you guys want to read Steven Kotler's The Rise of Superman, he also does a very good job of explaining the state of flow. But I really enjoyed, honestly, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's material best. And for me, that's the real indicator I'm always looking for. Now, here's a little experiment you guys can run that I've done personally. I found very, very interesting. Take Tetris, because Tetris is a really easy way to get in a state of flow. Now, Tetris has various levels, okay? So for me, like the highest level I ever really got in Tetris, I think was like 12 or 13 or even I can't remember. I think 15. I can't remember. Okay, so I have the app on my phone. I don't really remember my top record, but I know there's guys who take the game all the way to the top. So for me, when I work at the higher levels, it's stressful. It's difficult. You feel that stress. Exactly what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is talking about. If it's too difficult, you're gonna feel anxiety, stress, etc. Now, if it's too easy, you get bored. So if I'm working at level 1, 2, 3, it gets boring. Okay. Now let's say I'm working at level 7, 8, 9. Okay. Let's say that's my flow channel. Okay. I'm gonna start making moves like almost an expert would in Tetris. Okay. Maybe not exactly, but for me, it's gonna seem like because I'm working at the Goldilocks range. To me, I'm gonna be making genius moves that are relative to my skill level. Okay. So for me, those are my most creative, and of course it's going to develop. If I continue practicing Tetris, I'll develop to an actual, possibly a world-class Tetris player. If you commit your time and energy to it, and you stay in those ranges, your creativity, according to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, your ability to make the most brilliant moves for your level, your current level, is going to be more repeated, or more practice, or more, how should I say, it's going to manifest itself at those levels more often. You get more practice making brilliant moves if you find the right level. Okay, so that's also a great indicator that you're at the right level. You're getting it right. It's challenging, but you're getting it right. Now, if you put somebody in the practice room and they're getting everything wrong, they're getting taken down at every turn, they're getting dropped at every exchange, they're getting armbar. This is my opinion, is not the best way to train. Why? Because you're teaching that guy he's no good. You're teaching that guy he's gonna lose. You're teaching that guy that, hey, you don't belong in the winner's circle. You're teaching him bad habits. It's got to be tough yet doable. Not too tough that it zaps our willpower. Okay, so that's a lot to think about. Pick up any product on Flow. Just type in, well, it's going to be hard to type in Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, okay, but Google it. You'll find it, okay, Flow. He has one book called Flow in the Workplace. Might be of interest to some of you guys. Check it out. Type it up. He's got many books out there. Find one. Google his name. It's a long name. It's not an easy one. And really, it's not that complicated. It's not that complicated. Find the right way to scale your workouts that makes sense for you. All right, with that said, we talked about CrossFit. Okay, guys, CrossFitters. I know you guys got a little bit angry with me. First of all, I didn't say I don't like CrossFit. Okay, now I haven't been in the CrossFit loop for many years. I don't know if CrossFit's philosophies have evolved, which I'm sure they have. I'm quite confident they probably have, because they're smart people. CrossFitters are smart people. Okay. And when I read up on the CrossFit philosophy many years ago, okay, I haven't read up on it since then. Okay. Because I honestly don't use CrossFit personally. Now, I'll do a CrossFit type workout for myself. I'll make it up. Like, I get the system. I might do a 400-meter run and then some pull-ups. I might do that. I might do 4 sets of that. And I know that would be like a CrossFit-like workout. I might do a body weight routine, as many rounds as possible for time. So 10 push-ups, 10 squats, 10 burpees. I might do that for time. I might set a clock, put 10 minutes on, and do it for time. I like these protocols. I think these protocols are good. Now, my 2 criticisms I have for CrossFit: the old CrossFit formula. If the CrossFit formula has changed, please leave it in the comment. Correct me. I'm happy to be corrected. Okay, but as far as I know, the old CrossFit philosophy had 2 major flaws in it, according to me, from my perspective. Number 1, it's fatigue seeking. Every day you're going to your max. Yeah, for what I remember, it was 3 days really hard and then 1 day off. 3 days really hard. I think that's not sustainable in the long run, unless you're a freak or a very advanced athlete. It doesn't make sense to me to push my max every single day. I don't think I can get enough volume in the practice room. I don't think, because for me, pull-ups is also practice. Push-ups is a skill. Okay, if you read Pavel Tsatsoulin's work, he goes into a great argument of why even general exercises are a skill, or a skill to be developed. Okay, so 1, it's fatigue seeking. If you go for fatigue every day, you're gonna get injured for the reasons I cited before, and you're gonna burn out. Okay, so I don't fatigue seek every day. Second problem I have with CrossFit is they take the clean and jerk and the snatch, or the deadlift, and they do them for reps and time. You cannot rush, in my opinion. If you rush through a deadlift, or you rush, more importantly, through a clean and jerk, if you rush through a snatch, they have workouts where it's snatch this weight for 30 times 4 times. So go ahead, do it as fast as you can. And you'll see these CrossFitters, they're doing snatches and their technique is really bad. Their technique is out of whack, and that's a recipe for injury. Okay. No Olympic lifting coach is going to look at that and say, oh, those were 30 great snatches. No, he's going to be like, dude, this guy he's not going to last in the game. Okay, he's going to hurt himself. So these high precision movements should be done with as much time as you need to do them correctly, to set up and follow all the mechanical rules. Now, I don't think that they're wrong to do snatch. Snatch is a great exercise. Some people think you shouldn't Olympic lift. I think Olympic lifting is great, okay? But don't do it for time. Now, I'm sure, not that I've researched it, but I'm sure there are CrossFitters out there that have figured this out, and they don't do snatch for time, and they don't do clean and jerk for time, and they don't fatigue seek every day, and they probably work at a 70 to 80% max rate of perceived exertion, and they follow the traditional protocols that have been set in the past, okay, by excellent trainers such as Tudor, Pompa, etc. Okay. Now, I know there are many training philosophies. I'm not going to go over them all. That would be crazy. I don't know them all, but my training philosophy is don't do that. Okay, do not use the clean and jerk or the snatch for high reps. You'll break your back in the long run. Okay, so this is my two critiques, guys. If you're a CrossFitter, do CrossFit. In my opinion, do it. I like CrossFit. I think it's fun. Number one thing for training is, does it motivate you? Are you motivated to do CrossFit? If you're motivated to do, one guy told me, why would you swing a kettlebell when you can swing a dumbbell? Well, one, I'm motivated to swing a kettlebell. Okay, so I like working with kettlebells. So that's all the explanation I need. If it motivates me to work with hurdles, or it motivates me to do hill sprints, if I'm motivated to do Olympic lifting, if I'm motivated to do kettlebell, whatever motivates me, that's what you should do. Because if you have no motivation to do body weight, if it's not fun for you, you're never going to do it, or you're going to do it less. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, there are advantages for a kettlebell versus dumbbell. Swinging, there's some exercises you can do with a kettlebell that you really can't get with a dumbbell. Number one is the jerk, okay? Because when you jerk, if you have a dumbbell, you can't hold your arm close to your body enough. It's going to stress your shoulder. There are other differences, but they're irrelevant. I like working with kettlebells. That's all I need, okay? So that's my motivation. If you're not motivated to work with kettlebells, don't work with kettlebells. Okay, so for CrossFitters, do CrossFit. Don't feel like I'm telling you don't do CrossFit. Do it. Just, in my opinion, follow those two extra rules. Don't fatigue seek every day. Don't try to hit a PR every single day. And clean and jerks, be real careful. Okay, we also talked about science. Me and Joe talked about science, and we had a blast. Okay, it was really thought-provoking. It was meant to be fun and thought-provoking, but there were a lot of things that I felt were misunderstood. Okay, number one, I want to apologize to the scientific community. One of my anecdotes, I got it really wrong. Some of you guys wrote me, and I really appreciate being corrected, especially those of you who do it in the most in a polite fashion. You guys are very friendly. Some of you are very friendly, very kind. I appreciate it. Some of you went to explain to me, and again, I didn't research this, so this is what I've been told now, and I'll leave this to you scientists to comment. This is your wheelhouse. I will stay out of your wheelhouse, okay? We didn't have a scientist present to give the example, so I did it. I did my best. I'm not a scientist, okay? My domain is martial arts and philosophy. This is what I've studied in for 20 years. This is what I've been doing, and that's my wheelhouse, okay? So some of you guys wrote me that, look, Newton was very careful not to say it was a pulling force per se, okay? That he said it's attraction, and he explained it as, I always understood attraction as a pulling force, so forgive me for that misunderstanding. Some of you guys explained to me that attraction, he was very purposeful on not saying whether it was a pulling or pushing force. And then Einstein's curvature is not actually a pulling or pushing force. It's just a straight line in that curvature, okay? So again, I'm just paraphrasing what I read. I don't know. I'll let you guys talk about it in the comments. This is your wheelhouse. If you're a scientist, please go for it. Explain, elaborate, shed some light on it. Thank you very much. Now, there are anecdotes that I come across throughout the years, because in philosophy we study the scientific method. We study mathematics, not mathematics themselves, not science itself, but what they claim, how they know, the epistemology of it, okay, how we know things, okay. This is why sometimes we're going to have to get a philosopher and a scientist together in the same room and have a dialogue, because we both have a different way of seeing the world. This is very important. We have different ways of seeing the world. There are a lot of point of views, and when we dialogue to one another, we got to try to share our point of views and show each other around in each other's wheelhouses. Okay, so I talked about scientific revolutions. Now, for sure, we all know that Aristotle, he had some ideas that were wrong. Not because he was an intelligent guy. He's one of the most intelligent human beings in history, no doubt about it. Okay, this is not a criticism of Aristotle. The guy was a brilliant man. I admire him greatly. However, he had some beliefs that later on science refuted. Okay, so for instance, he believed that certain objects in themselves had levity. Okay, and they had a tendency to fall. Like, he explained things that today scientists don't accept and philosophers do not accept. Now, we've had many scientific revolutions throughout the history of science. Okay, if all of you who are familiar with Thomas Kuhn, he wrote a very interesting book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution. And what does he say? He said, look, we were able to generate myths throughout history, and every time we have a scientific revolution, we know the myths afterwards. Okay, so every time we have a scientific revolution, we can look back. Some theories were debunked and some theories were just completed, and there are a variety of interpretations. It's in the Thomas Kuhn Structure of Revolution, very interesting material. Now, with that said, I was talking about a higher level of skepticism, and we're gonna get to my sources very shortly, okay? But there are higher levels of skepticism. This is what I want to talk about today, and maybe this is where we're clashing, because there are standards in science. Again, science is a very intelligent community. The science community is a very intelligent community. Their whole system is based on weeding out anything that is imaginary, anything that is nonsensical. They're not just believing in anything. Okay, now during the podcast, I was trying to make some very thought-provoking type of thought experiments. I was going to try to twist and bend my theory, even though it was always going to remain a hypothesis. I was going to try to bend and twist my theory so that nobody can remove it, at least from the level of hypothesis. Obviously not. You cannot really just falsify something that's not falsifiable. Okay, so that aside, do scientific revolutions happen? They do. They've happened throughout history. They're very, very likely to happen again. When they do, why do they happen? Now, this is where we're going to chime in here. Okay, so first off, I was talking about science is the faith that the future will behave like the past. Now, this is material I'm drawing from David Hume. Now, David Hume is one of the greatest thinkers in human history, in my opinion. Okay, he wrote in the 1700s. His writings are hundreds of years old. They've been reviewed, they've been cross-examined, and his opinion is one that's highly held in philosophy. Okay, nobody thinks that David Hume was a nonsensical person. He was an extremely skeptical human being. So what did he say? So let's look at David Hume's comments on cause and effect. Okay, so let's take a look here. I'll give you guys a direct quote of David Hume's cause and effect. We have no other notion of cause and effect but that of certain objects which have always been conjoined together and which in the past instance have been found inseparable. We cannot penetrate into the reason of their conjunction. We can only observe the things in itself and always find them. From their constant conjunction, the objects acquire a union in the imagination. Now, what does that mean? Look, he's saying that you always see event A followed by event B, and it's always been like that throughout your entire life, throughout all your experiences. The connection between the two is impossible to deduce logically. It's only known via your historical experience with that cause and effect, that event, those two events, the cause and the effect. When you see A followed by B your entire life, you see A followed by B, event A followed by event B, your entire life, your imagination projects a connection. Now we're gonna talk about this a little bit further because I know this was a bit of a sticking point. A lot of people are freaking out that I said that science is based on faith. Now listen carefully. This is very important. It's not an easy look. Listen, I'll tell you why I say that it's not an easy thing to understand, because I went through the learning process, to get my degree in philosophy. This was a hard sticking point for me. It went against all my instincts. It took me a while to wrap my head around it. That's just the way it is for me. Okay, so I'm just sharing you guys my experiences. I'm telling you that this was a tough one for me to wrap my head around. He was telling us that, look, you see event A and you see event B, and they're always happening all the time. You think you believe it logically. You think you found a logical connection, but really, you only know it through a historical process. Now, even if I come up with a theory that's predictive, David Hume would tell us that this is all based on past experiences. You're just predicting the future on past experiences. You think that because the sun rises every day, it's going to rise again tomorrow. However, there is no logical reason. It's purely based on your belief that the future will behave like the past. Now, this is David Hume. You can agree with him. You can disagree with him. I personally agree with him. I personally agree that our beliefs in the patterns and regularities found in nature are purely based on our historical experience with them. Now, on the Rogan experience, I gave the example of a flipping a coin. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna keep it brief, and because I know a lot of you enjoyed that thought experiment, but I'm gonna elaborate it on a little bit. Okay, now this is something I learned in my textbooks in university. Okay, I learned it in my textbooks in university. So if you disagree with philosophy, please go ahead. That's your opinion. But this is my point of view, and I'm very open about it. I want to be very, very open about it. When you flip a coin, what are the odds that it's going to land on heads or tails? Everybody our natural instincts is to say 1 out of 2. The odds actually, if you're going to approach it purely logically, and you have no prejudice, if you have zero prejudice, it's going to be 1 in infinity. Why? Well, tough to explain a little bit, okay, but here it is. When I flip that coin and it's in the air, if you have no prior experience, if you have no historical experience with coins, you've never seen a coin be flipped. Now you have all your faculties, you're just as intelligent as you are now. You have an IQ of an adult. You're not a child now. You're an adult, and you understand that there's cause and effect in the world. Something's going to happen. However, you've never seen a coin, and you've never seen a coin be flipped. This is a first encounter with coins being flipped. When I flip it, you don't know that it's going to bounce on the ground and fall on one side. Then when you look at it, there's one image of heads on one side and an image of tails on another. You don't know that. What you know, for all you know, is when I flip it, that thing will turn into a bird and fly off. For all you know, when I flip that coin, it could turn into an ice cube and fall on the ground. If you have no prior experience with ice cubes or birds or butterflies or anything at all, if you're just pure reason and you're looking at it for the first time, it's impossible for us to know what's going to happen. However, when it happens and it falls on heads, and then it falls on tails, and it falls on tails, and it falls on heads, and it happens to fall on heads and tails about 50% of the time, and I keep flipping that coin over, now you've built a relationship with that coin. Now you've built a history with that coin. Now when I flip it, your mind is going to project that, hey, it's going to behave like it did in the past. It's going to land on heads or it's going to land on tails. Whatever your explanation for why is no longer logical. Why? Because you couldn't predict to us, you couldn't give us the prediction of what would happen in the first time around, the first encounter. The first encounter is always unpredictable. Therefore, all our beliefs are based on our experience, our physical experience, our historical experience. Even when we try to make it predictable in the future, if we try to say that, look, I have a theory, and this theory is predictive. It has a falsification, and it's predictive. It's falsifiable, and it's predictive. Even Hume would still tell you now, he would still tell you that is still based on past experiences, not on logic, not on deductive logic. It's based on inductive logic. And there's the problem of induction, which I don't know if I'm going to go into it now because it's going to be really long, and I want to keep this quite tidy. Okay, but there is a problem of induction. So let's look at another quote here. Okay, for you guys who are still with me now and still interested, and I know you guys, a lot of you are interested in asking me to elaborate on this, so I am. Okay, for you guys who are asking me to elaborate on it, here it is. Here's a quote from Thomas Kuhn. Okay, now, you scientists out there, you're familiar with Thomas Kuhn. I have a hard time believing that somebody could be a scientist and never heard of Thomas Kuhn. Okay, he was a historian, a scientist, and a philosopher of science. This is a very important human being. Why? Because he understands the point of view from various angles. Okay, so what does he say? He says, look, gravity interpreted as an innate attraction between every pair of particles of matter was an occult quality in the same sense as the scholastic tendency to fall had been. Don't forget, the tendency to fall is what Aristotle believed. Okay, he thought that things had something in themselves. They had this thing in themselves. Not easy to understand, okay, but they made them float or fall. Okay, he believed that the world was the center of the universe, therefore everything's going down to the center. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, when I read it, I knew it wasn't true, so I kind of glossed over it. Nobody agrees with that. I've never heard a philosopher argue for that. All philosophers say, look, he was wrong, so it's not something we cross-examine and really measure. It's just something we think that, look, he believed that he was wrong. We put it to bed. Nobody really writes about it, okay? Like, I've never heard, no modern-day philosopher writes about this, really, okay? What they will write about is maybe why he believed in that, you know? He was a smart guy. Why would he believe in something that's not true? Well, here's the reason. Here's the reason that I would say many philosophers would agree on, okay? Not all, but many. Let's read that quote real quick, and we'll look into that a little bit deeper. Gravity, interpreted as an innate attraction between every pair of particles of matter, was an occult quality, meaning it was an appeal to magic, so to speak. in the same sense as the scholastic tendency to fall had been. Now, of course, scientists don't believe in magic. They want evidence. They want your theory to be falsifiable. They want it to be predictive. But what I'm trying to explain to you all is that there are higher levels. Not all, okay, I know you philosophers out there, you understand this, and many of you scientists do understand this, of course, no doubt about it. You're very intelligent people. There is a higher level of skepticism than even Kuhn. So Kuhn is saying, look, he has other great quotes about how we generate myths. The problem of the induction, and then the weakness of induction, the problem of induction. And he was practicing a very high level of skepticism, but there are higher levels of skepticism, in my opinion. Okay, so here let's look real quick here at Hume's quote on Newton. Okay, Hume quoted on Newton. He said, "Look, while Newton seemed to draw off the veil for some of the mysteries of nature, he showed at the same time the imperfections of the mechanical philosophy, and thereby restored the ultimate secrets of that obscurity in which they ever did and ever will remain." That's a heavy duty quote. Okay, so what is he saying there? Look, this is how David Hume sees the world. Okay, this is how I understand it. This is what David Hume is trying to tell us. He's saying, look, science, we're observing patterns and regularities just like you. Okay, philosophers, we're observing patterns and regularities just like you are. The patterns and regularities found in nature are observed by our senses. No doubt about it. Nobody is disagreeing with this point. We all agree. Beautiful. Here's the point where there's a fork in the road. I don't want to speak for all scientists, but from what Hume is saying, scientists believe that those laws are out there in the world, okay? Where Kant and Hume are telling you, no, look, you are from your own imagination projecting those laws onto those events. That's why I was telling Joe that I see, like Hume, the laws of nature as bookmarks, names we give those patterns and regularities. Now, try to concentrate on this a little bit, because this was a real mind shift for me. So I'm assuming it's the same for you guys. Again, I'm just sharing my past experience. Those patterns and regularities you see in nature are named. We give them names. But those patterns and regularities, the laws we give, are just names. That's it, just names. We cannot say that there are forces out there. Now, I know we're going to have a major difference of opinion here. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Are those forces out there? If you guys want to believe that those forces are out there, in themselves, out there, that's up to you. I personally don't believe that. I agree with Hume and I agree with Kant. Let's look at a little quote here from Kant and see what you guys think about this. "We ourselves introduce that order and regularity in the appearance which we entitle nature." We ourselves introduce that order and regularity in the appearance we entitle nature. "We could never find them in appearance had we not ourselves, by the nature of our own minds, originally set them there." Okay, so he's saying your mind is projecting that there's a law out there. Really, all you're doing is observing patterns and regularities found in nature. Now, here's a different way to think about it that helped me. Somebody explained it to me like this many years ago, and it helped me. Why does science have to give us theories? Can't they just... One person once expressed this to me this way. Why can't they just tell us what the patterns and regularities are objectively? Bookmark them and leave it at that. Don't tell us about believe in this theory or that theory. Don't give me anything to believe in. Just describe it objectively. Don't tell me that there's a force behind it all. Okay? That's why I was really amazed when some of you wrote to me. Okay? I was really happy to see that you guys were telling me, look, Newton was very careful not to say it was a pulling or pushing force, and not to say whether there was a medium that was at work. He just found the pattern. So he was actually very true to this point of view, which I found really amazing. I really want to thank you guys for letting me know about that, because I hold Newton even in higher esteem now. I think I always thought he was brilliant. I have a great admiration for him and all scientists. Okay, I'm not a scientist, but I have a great admiration for science. I listen to all the science books. I love it. Okay, it's not my wheelhouse, but I love it. I'm very interested in science. And the fact that you guys pointed that out shows me that the guy was even more brilliant than I originally thought. Like he's probably arguably the greatest thinker of all time. the greatest scientist of all time. But really amazing. Now, I don't know if he wrote on that extensively like Hume did, but Hume wrote on it extensively. Okay, he says, look, one way, actually, let me go back to the anecdote I was giving. Can't we just describe nature objectively? Don't give us theories to believe in. Don't give us like a more than that. Just tell us what the patterns and regularities are as objectively as humanly possible, and then let everybody propose their theories. Okay, so Hume is proposing a theory, scientists are proposing a theory, but first, can we all agree? This is a really important point. Okay, can we all agree that these patterns are happening? I think we can. These patterns, these regularities are happening. Then can we have a separate discussion on theories? Okay, so here's why at one point in the podcast I said that a hypothesis, and I was using a Humean, a David Hume level of skepticism here. Okay, obviously in science you guys have hypothesis, theory, fact, law, etc. I get it, but that's not what I was saying. What I'm saying is, from a perspective of a philosopher, a skeptic philosopher, of the level of Hume, and there are higher levels of skepticism, guys. When we get to Berkeley, we might have a chance to talk about Berkeley. Berkeley was even, in my opinion, a higher level of skepticism. He didn't believe that there was a world out there. And when you read his material, he's telling you, look, these are all presuppositions you're making. And I probably won't get in detail because there's already too much philosophy for this channel. Okay, I want to keep this channel 99%, 95% training. Okay, but the only reason I'm going into this is because of the Rogan podcast, and you guys are asking me to follow up on it. Okay, and a lot of you asking me to do a philosophy podcast. Maybe one day we'll have fun with it. We'll bring on all sorts of thinkers and have fun with it. But right now, I'll be honest with you, I don't have the time for that. So I'm going to elaborate in this episode on the things that I said. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, I said that, look, a scientific fact and a mathematical fact are not the same. Why? A mathematical fact, this is very well agreed upon, is known analytically. It's true by definition. We cannot massage it. Okay, it's true by definition. We're not massaging it. We're not looking at it different ways. That's what it is. That's what you get. Now, there are paradoxes in mathematics. I get it. I'm not going to go into that right now. But let's all agree right now that math is analytical. It's true by definition. It is true by definition. Okay? From a David Hume level of skepticism, a natural fact or scientific fact can never ultimately, in the ultimate sense, pass hypothesis. Why? Why? Because there can always be an alternate explanation. Whether it's predictable or falsifiable, there could always be another hypothesis that's equally good, however, not as popular. Now, I can dig up some Thomas Kuhn examples, quotes that say the exact same thing. I could dig up various philosophers that say the exact same thing. We can have a different set of hypotheses laid over the same facts, and it's just as good, just not as popular. I would love for you, those of you who practice science, how many definitions of scientific fact is there? And we all know that they all have an element of agreed upon. It must be agreed upon. The fact must be agreed upon. In mathematics, it's not thought of the same way. It's true by definition. There's just no massaging it. Okay, so that's why I was trying to use the word hypothesis in the ultimate sense. I understand that there's a progression in science. No doubt about it. You know, science is very popular. We know. Okay, we know that theory and law is not the same thing. Get it. 100%. Hypothesis, in the ultimate sense, a scientific fact, in the ultimate sense, guys, please understand this. It can never leave hypothesis. Why? Because it can never be true by definition. It can never be like a mathematical fact. Now, I also said something about logic. Now, I love logic. I'm married to logic. Logic is beautiful. I'm never turning my back on logic. Okay. However, there has been some great criticisms about logic that personally bothered me in life. I've come across, and I was sharing that with Joe. Okay. Now, for many years, I used to believe that logic was infallible, unshakable. Logic is perfect. Okay. And through many years of philosophy, I've come across certain thoughts that were uncomfortable to that belief. You know, they shook my belief in perfect reason. And I'm going to share them with you guys. Accept them, reject them. Okay. Then we can go back to talking about trading. I look forward when we go back to talk about trading. I love talking about philosophy, but I also love talking about trading. Okay, so all the best minds, we cannot agree. All the greatest minds at every level, okay? People don't even agree. Logicians don't even agree. Philosophers don't agree. We don't agree on what is true. Okay, so here's my view. Logic is perfect, but human beings are flawed. Logic is perfect because if you try to argue against logic, you need a logical argument, and then therefore it's a self-defeating position. You can't use logic to argue against logic. But there are heavy criticisms against logic. Logical criticisms. Logic seems to have this incredible quality. Okay, it's true by definition, etc. However, we're not that wise to use it. That's my point of view. Men will always be able to make a mistake. When we're using science, scientific, our senses, when we're trying to be empirical, we can make a mistake. When we're trying to be logical, we can make a mistake. A great example, like I tried to give, Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson couldn't agree on the definition of what is true. Okay, now I believe there is a definition on what is true. It's not easy to get to it, but I think if they keep talking, they'll eventually agree to something. However, years down the line, some new guy, a really intelligent guy, is going to cross-examine them and find little faults. This is what's happened throughout human history. Plato and Aristotle didn't agree with one another. Voltaire and Leibniz didn't agree with one another. Today's intellectuals, there's different camps. They all say that they use perfect logic or as best they can. We have limitations. Human beings have limitations. So even logic is not the best way. Now, I believe in logic is the best we can do. If you're an honest person and you're using logic as honestly as you can, we can't find any fault with you. If this is your best of your ability to understand the world around you, if this is your honest attempt, I hold nothing against you. I think you're in there. You're doing your best, and everybody is. I think that's how we have to approach it. Is the answer right or wrong? That's very important, crucial. However, is the individual doing their best, their honest best? Are they giving their sincere best to be, to come across the truth? That's the most important thing. So we talk about so many things. I'm trying to think about what else we talked about. We had a lot of different, and I know you guys are going to follow up with questions, but eventually I'm going to have to cut it off. I was considering doing this, and I want to hear what you guys think. Okay. I was considering doing some philosophy episodes, but just on the podcast, on iTunes, not on the YouTube. I want to keep the YouTube really training oriented. Okay. Very little science, philosophy, obviously, just really little. But I want to bring on guests, scientists, physicists, philosophers, skeptic, every type of human being, and just have a conversation, pick a topic, conversation. I love to learn. I love to discuss. I love to cross-examine people. I love to be cross-examined as well. I love people to look at my thoughts and tell me what they think. Guys, we all have to learn. We all have to polish our beliefs and get to the truth as best we can. Okay, so I'm trying to think right now what else we talked about. If I do those podcasts, guys, if I do those iTunes things, they're going to be far and few between, but they'll be fun. And hopefully even become regular if I can find the time. Oh, yes, here's another thing I want to touch upon that I got from you guys. I said that on the show I would talk about GSP, strength and conditioning, and why he says he never does strength and conditioning, and why he says he never does cardio, and we never got to it. Me and Joe never got to it. I mean, we talked about so many things. We jumped from topic to topic. It was pretty fast. It was pretty fast paced. Okay, so a bunch of you wrote to me, hey, coach, you never got to that. Can you do it? Can you talk about it? I will talk about it right now. Okay, so how much time do we have? Okay, we are about 15 minutes away from the overtime. So we have plenty of time to talk about it. All right, so I'm going to probably end on this. George's idea, in my opinion, I have to talk to him about it, okay? I have to get him in the room and actually ask him his definition. Because I'll tell you guys, we did plenty of conditioning. Plenty. I was there, guys. I'm a witness. We were there. We did it together. I was in the same room doing the same workouts and sometimes just monitoring the workouts, okay? But between fights, I was actually doing the workouts with him quite a bit. His idea of strength and conditioning, in my opinion, how he understands it is circuit training. Because we did a period of circuit training. We did do a period where George does one exercise, moves from one station to another, and he didn't like it. Okay, we did it for a prolonged period. I would say about a year and a half, 2 years. He didn't enjoy it. I think later on in his career, he criticized it. He thought it wasn't as good as what we used to do, and we went back to the old formula. Now, what was the old formula? The old formula was really simple. There was always sprinting. Okay, so when he says he doesn't do cardio, in his mind, don't forget, his first language is not English. Okay, when he thinks cardio, again, I don't want to speak for him, but this is how I think what he's imagining in his head. He's thinking about like a long distance jog. He thinks people do that still. He in his mind, they do like a boxer's workout or Muay Thai. In Muay Thai, it's very traditional to go run for a prolonged period. George, in his entire career, always did a sprint routine before his fights. Always. And he sprints throughout the year. He does track throughout the year. So he'll do 400 meters, take a break, 400 meters, take a break. Or some days he'll do 200 meters, some days he'll do 100 meters. But he rarely runs further than 400 meters. So to him, he's not doing cardio. He's doing anaerobic work. Okay, define it how you will. The man speaks French first. Okay, all due respect. The man's first language is French. He's trying to communicate with you guys that doing long distance cardio just doesn't work. Right? It's not needed. Not that it doesn't work. It's not needed, according to him. Strength and conditioning to him is like CrossFit and circuit training, and he doesn't know a lot about that stuff. Okay, he did it for a little bit. He didn't like it. For him, gymnastics is not strength and conditioning. And if you ask, it makes sense, because if you ask a gymnast, "Hey, did you do your strength and conditioning today?" They'll be like, "What? No, I just practice gym." If you go to a track guy or you go to an Olympic lifter, because George does a lot of Olympic lifting, he does. You tell him, "Hey, did you do your strength and conditioning today?" He's gonna be like, "What? I know, I just did my Olympic lifting workout." You know, they might not word it that way. And I think that's where the confusion is. For George, he did Olympic lifting. He did weights, no doubt about it. He did hurdles, like track and field. Well, not track and field per se, not the sports of track and field, but sprinting, long jumps. He did all that. Okay? Not competitively, but just as a general physical preparation. What else do we do? He does pool workouts. Okay, big on pool workouts. Pool, swimming, and those not water weights, but they're like fins. He does them in the water. He does a whole thing. He built a whole facility where he has a pool in there because that's how much he believes in the pool. But for him, he's working his joints. You know, he's strengthening his joints. To him, it's not circuit training, therefore not strength and conditioning. I personally categorize it as conditioning. I don't use the term strength and conditioning, but you're conditioning the body. So, does George do fitness? Yes. Then he goes into a phase close to the fight where he doesn't do any of it. So I think that's what brings more confusion. When we get closer to the fight, we cut all that to a minimum, and now it becomes more round of jiu-jitsu, more round of kickboxing, more round of Muay Thai, more round of clinching, more rounds of grappling, more MMA stuff. Less general, more specific. Now, a lot of you out there do this. Now, this is no surprise. But to him, he's preparing for his fight using martial arts for conditioning now. In my opinion, you don't do that all year round because you'll plateau quicker than somebody who goes through cycles of general physical preparation and then specific sport-specific preparation. So you're doing your track and field and gymnastics to a certain level, and then you cut that. You drop that really drastically, and then you start upping your martial arts training. And we're going to try to convert all that athleticism you built into your martial arts training. We're going to try to convert it. We're going to sharpen your technique. We're going to sharpen your timing, plus convert all that athleticism. Okay, that's the theory. Is it proven? Well, no. I wouldn't say it's proven in a lab. I don't know about that. But I will tell you that many athletes have used this kind of formula, and it works quite well. We've done it, and we feel very comfortable with it. Now, it doesn't mean we stop doing martial arts all year round. We just change the ratio. Okay, so maybe off season, let's call it off season, when you don't have a fight book, we're doing about 70% martial arts, 30% conditioning. I wouldn't go that far. I think that's the maximum. So I prefer doing like 80-20, let's say. And then closer to my fight, I'm doing 85% martial arts, 90%, 95% martial arts. So I'm doing 100% martial arts, no conditioning the last 2-3 weeks. I won't even do any conditioning. Maybe a couple of runs. Maybe like a 20-minute sprint routine. Like we'll warm up for 40 minutes, sprint for not even 20. Okay, 20 is long. 10-minute sprint routine. It's over. It's done. It's so brief. Okay? You know, maybe a med ball tosses. But it's going to be so brief. Let's put it 95% martial arts. Let's put it 95% martial arts up the last few weeks of the fight. Okay? So we did plenty of conditioning. Maybe it's not strength and conditioning. I know George hates that term because he doesn't like that kind of stuff. Circuit training he thinks is not good. So he's trying to discourage you guys from doing something he thinks is not effective. All right, guys. I hope that was a fun episode. Please like, share, comment, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.